this shit hard.
This. Unlike The Witcher 3, and this was controversial for a while, Cyberpunk remains entirely first-person during most gameplay scenes. You never really see your character, and instead rely on camera movement and gestures to get your point across. But that's also really interesting in this case. The development team has implemented full body awareness. You can see your feet, torso, and arms throughout play, and this enables some very fluid first-person animation. Cutscenes and gameplay, of course, benefit
I
greatly
could have
from
turned that
this.
off the edge.
But why is it such a big deal? Well, honestly, I feel that it contributes greatly to the sense of immersion. And it's something you don't typically see in large-scale RPG. Games such as Fallout 4 are a good example of what you get when you don't do this. When you do combat, using your weapon and using the dynamic cover system, it is pretty good, closer to a proper shooter than a typical RPG. And with the animation work, that really helps sell it. Same goes for driving. When you climb behind the wheel of a car, the first-person viewpoint is remarkably immersive. But in this case, if you prefer, it is possible to switch to third person specifically for driving, and that also works well with excellent camera placement and race car physics. There are some specific first-person cutscenes that also deserve a specific highlight. Like this one. Early in the game, you're presented with a montage that rapidly jumps between different scenes, showing you and Jackie up to no good in Night City. But what makes it so impressive is the way that it jump cuts between different scenes. But not just that, it carries the momentum from one scene to the next in the most seamless fashion. It's unbelievably smooth. Now, I'm not entirely sure how this works. Perhaps it's all just pre-calculated. But the way it moves so quickly between these different areas initially had me thinking it was just a video. But no, it's real time, and your customized character shows up in all the scenes. Honestly, at this point though, it still feels like I'm just scratching the surface of what's in the game visually. But there are some other details I want to mention. For instance, the architecture. The detail level is high, yes, but it's the design of the buildings specifically that make for such an atmospheric world. The bizarre shapes and obelisks that litter the skyline are tremendous to behold. Some of them you can enter and explore. But even then, there's just this real sense of style throughout the world that is very compelling. It's one of the reasons I spent so much time on foot exploring. When exploring Pacifica, a ruined part of Main City, my love of urban exploration was ignited. It somehow really conveys that feeling of being alone in a place that was once alive with activity. Just the way everything's stacked and pieced together is really compelling and unusual for a game like this. It's this design specifically that feels more like a giant Deus Ex than a typical open world city. Equally, I think it's worth noting the quality of the interior.
Replaced them with these first-gen pieces of garbage.
Game and see a lot of interior spaces. Some of it is very futuristic, with lots of reflective materials adorning the walls and unique designs and angles in every room. Others feel more run down, like a ghost of a past civilization, while others still are more for the party-goer and the underbelly of the city. When entering any of these locations, open world to these locations is completely
I understand.
it really makes moving in and out of different environments and in and out of missions all the more immersive. Which kind of brings us to some of the design elements, which I want to briefly discuss. There are limitations and flaws, of course, but ultimately, this really is kind of a Deus Ex style game with vehicles and large cities to explore. Infiltrating and taking out photos is remarkably fun, and there's a lot of freedom to decide how you tackle each mission. You can, of course, rely on stealth, both ranged and up close. There's typical combat, there's hacking, dialogue choices, and other options available as well. Scoping out the perimeter and finding a way inside the buildings is really an interesting gameplay mechanic that I still enjoy today, and it worked well here. While the missions themselves are fairly open-ended, by and large, there are also occasional scripted sequences scattered in even measure. Plus, there's just an attention to detail that you don't often see in these types of games. It's not just about the mission. The journey to the mission and back from the mission can become just as important as actually accomplishing your goal. One example of this, there was a point in the story where you had to go rescue someone from this facility out in the desert. As you approach the facility, a huge sandstorm looms in the horizon. Once you reach the objective then, you can engage in the more free-form mission design, and it works really well. Once you achieve your objective, you end up kind of shooting your way out. And this is what triggers one of these scripted scenes. After surviving that, though, you actually find a place to hunker down, and they use this moment to sort of wrap up the mission. It offers character building moments and dialogue options. You're trapped in this abandoned house while waiting out the sandstorm. You then wake up the next day.
You a cornball?
Still there.
Tell me how I shoot.
The way the game sort of
Not a fucking.
the way it sort of builds the characters is really quite impressive.
Tell her she can get it.
It's something, again, you don't typically see in these open world city games outside of games from Rockstar. Of course, through it all, there is at least an elephant in the room that I can't
Way up.
ignore, and that's the
Started
bugs.
broadcasting
Now, in
the
my
moment
case,
you
I feel
showed
that
up.
perhaps somewhat
It
lucky.
wasn't
I didn't
finished, not
encounter
like I
game
wanted it.
breaking
But
bugs.
at least
Most
people
of these
got
issues were minor and typically
There's a
involved
death warrant out of me.
animations.
You
or
probably
stuff like
already
this.
knew
The
that.
car kind of goes crazy. on
Yeah,
the
I could
entire
give a
track
shit
to
too.
get.
But
Stuff
Regina
like this
wants to help
does
you out.
happen. Absolutely.
Help
Sometimes
me
you
out.
find items
She's the one
floating
who
in the air.
help.
Other times sequences won't play out quite right. Now, I don't typically
That's
focus
really
on
I
this sort
knew.
of thing in videos.
Shit, she was my mentor.
But I did
Now,
want to mention it in some
sold right out.
But based on the track record that
I
CD
won't be
Projekt
bought.
has, say that we can expect some pretty significant fixes over time. After all, The Witcher 3
Never ever sold out. That'll look great on you.
Better than
But really, as
sellout.
noted before, this was just
Really
the
hate
surface.
Regina
I hope this
that
video
much.
highlighted some of the more impressive features on display. There is a lot more to
Doesn't it
discuss
bother
with this
you?
game over the coming days, however.
The
Alex will have his PC optimized settings, and
Cover
before
ups.
he's able to use ray tracing, I'll be diving into
Things
consoles
used to be
versus
different.
PC.
Media's word
Tackling
fucking
the rest.
meant something.
If you're wondering about my
Track those
performance for
sons
this
of
video,
bitches
well, I
every
had
dirty
excellent
moment.
experience on my system
Now,
as you would expect from
You
the
can prove
specifications.
halts in
I
Arizona's
often
pocket.
kept this video
Nobody
at
gives
30
a
frames
flying
per second, simply to run with a higher resolution without frame rate inconsistencies. But in reality, I've been playing with DLSS performance enabled
why do that veteran
maximum
piece?
settings while maintaining 50
So that
to
people
90
start
frames per
asking
second
questions?
on a G-Sync
Start
compatible
wondering.
OLED using
Just like you
HDR.
now.
Loading
Maybe
specs,
that
frame
little
rate is
grain
high,
of discomfort will
responsive,
grow into
it looks
dissent.
smart.
Who knows?
There are those occasional
Figure it's
bugs
worth
I
a
mentioned,
try.
but honestly, it feels like a true next-generation PC game, despite being in development for a long time.
Come on,
So,
let's go.
it's interesting to see
You go the way of
how
the Gonk
console
here.
versions
Won't change a thing.
That's it for now, though.
Running won't
Hopefully
change
you
anything
enjoyed this
either.
visual tour
I'll manage
of
without your
Cyberpunk
help.
2077.
This all out of spite for
Be sure to
Regina.
like and subscribe.
You got something to
Find
prove
us
to
over
her.
on Twitter. If you want to see this video in the highest quality, though, be sure to check out our Patreon.
You don't know Jack.
Download a direct MP4 of the presentation. That's it for now, though. Thanks for watching.
You got an itch for the truth, don't you? If you want to know who Regina is now, what she really fights for, just go and see her. At the very least, it'd mean a lot to her. Max?
Cyberpunk is here. We have it and on every platform out there. In terms of open world games, it's an absolute colossus in its technical ambition, leaving top-end PCs a way to
That's all
show
I
visuals
ask.
way beyond what's usually possible. Ray tracing, volumetric lighting,
Download a
it
few
all combines
things.
to create something incredible on
Do what you
PC.
gotta do.
But on console, well, here it is. And perhaps inevitably, it's a different story, missing many of those top-end presets. Cutbacks are a reality, but how severe are they? And is it still at the very least playable? To answer that, we turn to the last-gen PlayStation consoles first, looking at the most widely adopted machine, Ps4, and the enhanced Ps4 Pro version today. Can they handle Cyberpunk even with CPR's optimizations? Does frame rate hold up? And what of the resolutions? I dug into the early hours of the game to get a first look at what's going on, and to help me discuss the findings here, I have my good friend and colleague, John Linneman.
Hey Tom, I've also been playing the game, mostly on PC of course, but I did sample some of the console versions as well. And yes, just to get the information out there, we're starting with PS4 first it seems, but I know you're going to be doing Xbox next, so
Chauffeur.
we'll have both.
What's next?
Yeah, we'll get there.
I haven't actually
Black
played
Mark.
the base system
No
yet,
time to waste.
but looking at what you've
go.
captured and the data
Take care,
you've
Max.
shared, it's
Yeah, you
interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like the big question, I think, going into this is, you know, people want to see the next-gen consoles running it, and we'll get to that eventually, but the base consoles are the most widely used, and so it felt like the fairest thing to just jump in here and just give it an honest breakdown of what you're really getting, at least, you know, based on the first 3 hours as a sample. But yeah, it is, to be honest, not looking altogether too good for the base machine.
It's a little dire, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in fact, I guess the thing I would say before we get started here is that what this brings to mind actually is a lot of the late generation games released on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, where games started to sort of exceed what those machines were capable of, and the performance and visual loss was extremely obvious. You know, stuff like Far Cry 3, Crysis 3, lots of 3s actually. These games did not work well on PS3 or 360. You had to play it on PC. And that's kind of the sense I'm getting here.
Right, well, shall we jump straight into it and look at the breakdown of resolutions, just to know straight up what we're getting?
Let's do it.
So, worth saying that this is on patch 1.02. I know CDPR is very keen on usually updating their games. We saw it a lot with The Witcher. And basically on PS4,
glad you got through that
it's
stuff.
very dynamic.
Looks like I'm up to bat with
Which
it
works
now.
actually when
Get
you look
close.
into the sky, but when you're in kind of the inner city areas, it's going to go down to 720p and numbers in between, so it can definitely fluctuate. But based on the frame rate, I think for the most part it's going to be hanging around the bottom end of that range there.
Yeah, so it seems like it's mostly 720p looking at your footage. And also, I noticed that the TAA doesn't really work that well with this low resolution, so there is a lot of fizzling and artifacts that result from this. So the game ends up looking extremely blurry and just kind of visually kind of glitchy as a result of this.
Yeah, that TAA that CDPR uses, it kind of adds all this banding when you kind of turn against the straight edge of a wall or stuff like that.
You know what, Tom? This is basically what you would expect a Switch port of another modern game to look like.
Yeah, definitely. You remember the Witcher 3 on Switch had all of this going on for it, you know, all this pixel fizzle, you could call it, and all these trails, and this general look of a Vaseline effect as it adapted the resolutions.
Okay, but what about the PS4 Pro then?
So Ps4 Pro, I thought, okay, you know, what can we expect? The next level up might be 1080p, but in reality, it maxes out at 1188p, 2112 by 1188. Which, if you look at the way it scales on a 4K screen, that is 55% of the overall pixel count on each axis. So it makes sense from that perspective. It's a very sort of arbitrary number, 1188, but in reality it does dip and it goes down to 972p, so 1728 by 972, which comes in at 45% on the axis of 4K. So I think overall it works really well on a 1080p screen. You know, in the best case you get kind of a slightly super sampled image, but you're not going to really notice the drops under that too severely. It's just going to look a little smudged, a little more blurred.
And it's also worth pointing out, having seen this on PS4 Pro, it seems like the HUD and the UI elements are all rendered at 1080p as well. So there's really no 4K output happening here.
I mean, I thought that perhaps, you know, it could push to 1440p, but it's around 1080p most of the way. In terms of comparisons between the two, I think it's mostly straightforward. Differences in shadow quality, screen space reflections are pretty much null. There's nothing between them. And even draw distances, I did a kind of, you know, driving test along big roads, big city areas, and there's not enough to kind of discern between the two.
And honestly, Tom, in comparison to the PC version, this is hugely cut down.
Yes.
There's just so much less detail in the scene.
You mentioned that there's a big difference in NPC count as well, you know, cars and NPCs.
That's right, and on the PC there's a specific option for this as well. And also there's something on PC called slow hard drive mode, which I suspect is what we're seeing on the consoles as well, just to keep up with it, because if you're on these the base or the Pro, basically last-gen machines, you're going to be using most likely a mechanical hard drive. And even if you have an SSD installed, the internal controller can't take full advantage of it. So they obviously had to be cautious with this.
Yeah, it does make sense, but looking at the way it runs in these comparisons, there's still issues with streaming from those hard drives, because the base PS4 in particular, this might be incidental, it might be a bit randomized between the consoles, but I noticed on base PS4 there's a lot of kind of textures that didn't load in. Even for a long time, you can just stare at a texture and it's just not popping into a higher res version of the asset. So it does seem like there's some streaming issues for sure. Some of this might be resolved by patches down the line, but for now, yeah, you know, there are instances where you just walk past an object and think, gosh, is that really meant to be like that? Is it? I mean, I'm waiting for it to just pop in like this. There's rubbish bags here, which just, you look at them and you think, well,
They look like rubbish bags.
they do.
But maybe not in the way that they were intended to.
Yeah, I'm just really curious. But we've seen all this before with Witcher 3, which was not entirely perfect when it launched. You remember a lot of pop-in and a lot of visual issues.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it wasn't just not perfect. It was actually rather poor at launch. There was a lot of performance and weird issues when the game was released on PS4, and they have gone back and mostly corrected just about everything and continue to refine and improve it. But I suspect we will continue to see some improvements, but because these are now last generation machines, I wouldn't expect them to put much effort into it. I think that they clearly put a high-end cutting edge hardware, and that comes with a cost.
Yeah, actually true. And no better way to summarize that than to look at the performance side, because we went through this a bit earlier, but yeah, this isn't looking too great.
So I think at this point I would say I'd have been perfectly fine with the visual cuts if it guaranteed a smooth frame rate. But unfortunately, we are once again dipping back into sort of PS3 and 360 era frame rates.
At least it's V-Synced on PS4. That's a plus. Right, so I think base PS4 is where I started, so let's kick off with that and give a kind of lowdown of what to expect from the first 3 hours anyway. So the first battle, it looks pretty serviceable. I mean, 30 FPS with some occasional drops to maybe 27 FPS or so. But at that point, you think, okay, this is acceptable. It's about 45 minutes into the game where you realise, okay, things have taken a very sour turn, and this is just not playable anymore. It's this sort of set piece mode where you're driving down through the inner city, and you're in a shootout, car chase, and it cannot run. It's not just that it's running at 20 FPS, under 20 FPS, but it stutters as well as it streams in the world.
There's slowdown, there's stuttering, the visual quality is seriously
got a simple
compromised,
gig.
and the whole thing is
There's
just
a
kind
van
of,
sitting at a revered
this is
courier
really just
services
a
facility.
scripted
You're gonna break
sequence,
in,
and the
collect-
game actually gets more demanding than this as you play.
So obviously the next test is, that first moment
If
when
you wanna know what's in the
emerge from
ride,
city,
check
where
the
you've got full
attachment.
control. You can walk anywhere, you can run anywhere, you can this scene,
I love that it says pump.
What's happening?
Where it actually
I think this is about the level I expected of base PS4 when I went in. I thought this is kind of moderately playable, I think everyone playing this right now on the regular PS4 will kind of accept that the PS5 is out and there's an acceptance that they won't be getting the premium experience anymore. This is kind of a bit sidelined by perhaps. But the question is this really acceptable even now, just as a standby?
That's a tricky one, and for us, obviously, we're really into this stuff and sensitive to performance of it. You look back over the years, and people were really into stuff like Fallout 4. They were into Skyrim. Even like Grand Theft Auto 5 on PS3 and 360. You look at some of those frame rates in the city, and you're getting into the low 20s regularly, right? We're okay with it, right? It's not good now. We've gotten used to better on these consoles, but I do think there is a subset of people playing it that they don't care. They'll be happy enough with the experience, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
There's definitely points where it will impact how well you can aim and how well you drive. I did struggle to drive around even. Another thing to touch on here is the crashes I've experienced on base PS4. It's a bit of a weird one. I had this happen 3 times over the course of my playthrough, all on base PS4, not on Pro, but it's certainly possible. Basically, I went forward after entering the main city area, and the first time I talked to Jackie, pretty much it just crashes to the PS4 menus. I rebooted the whole game and tried again, and it happened right there again. So it took a full PS4 restart to get through this area. And then it ran pretty flawlessly until a battle later on against the Maelstrom clan, and it just sort of tanked performance and then crashed again in one of the battles there. Again, this is so we'll have to see if this is addressed down the line.
I mean, for me, this is not acceptable. I would never want to play the game this way. It's terrible. Okay, so I kind of feel like we're just like pressing on the wound here at this point. It's not good on the base PS4. So I guess I'm interested then to see where the Ps4 Pro really comes out. I've seen a little bit of this, and it's not perfect from what I've seen, but playing it myself, but it does seem to hit 30 a lot more often.
For sure. I really thought going into this chat with you, I'd be able to say, yeah, base PS4 don't go for Pro is the one. Like, I started this game, this playthrough, with practically cap 30, and it's perfect.
Even that initial drive, when you get out of it's not bad. Like, there are dips, but it holds much closer to the 30 FPS line. So you're probably, again, it seems like, okay, this is not bad at this point.
Yeah, at that point, you just think, okay, this can handle anything. But then you get out into the big city, and you begin to see, mostly it's fine, but then you first get into your car, and then immediately you realize, this is very familiar again.
It's very Grand Theft Auto, though. I mean, this is how, until this gen, Rockstar's obviously changed on PS4 and Xbox One, but this is how Rockstar games were in the past. You get in the car, and it's slow. It's kind of the same.
I did the same thing, by the way, triggered a few battles.
This alley is intense.
For comparison, the PS4 in this alley, Xbox will have 15 FPS lowest with those that can push it, and this is about 18 and the worst case, so I mean it's not an exact like test, but it is
similarly demanding.
Yeah, it's very demanding.
Kind of reminds me of the Corvega factory that you always tested in Fallout 4.
I think obviously Cyberpunk's way beyond what Fallout's doing. Quality of materials and the way lighting works, but it's a similar feeling that there's a real CPU bottleneck in terms of putting everything together.
Yeah, I think that's actually the biggest thing here, is that the game's just too heavy on the CPUs for this Jaguar cores in all of the last gen machines. I think we're probably going to find similar results on the Xbox as well. We just assume the base Xbox One actually. Oh my gosh, would be interesting.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I suspect we're going under 720p there, but we'll see. Maybe not.
But yeah, Pro, I would say otherwise, it can hit 30 way more consistently than the base model. It's just outdoors, driving, anything to do with that sort of market area, it just isn't as playable as you'd hope.
Yeah. I mean, overall though, if you're playing on the PS4 Pro, it does at least seem like an experience that is a lot more playable than the base system. It's very much in line with older open world games where we often saw pretty unstable performance. It's really, again, if you really look at this generation, I actually think the PS4 Pro and they did pretty well with open world games. Most open world games actually deliver fairly stable frame rates. This is more in line with how it used to be, I guess you could say. It's not good though, but them's the breaks. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it then. This is definitely going to be one of those cases, I think, where you want to upgrade. there's more of this coming up, but playing this on PS5, it's still pretty soft. It has some of the limitations because it's in backwards compatibility mode, but the frame rate is dramatically better.
It's 60 FPS uncapped as well, unlike Pro.
Correct.
Which is big. I mean, I can't wait for us to dig our teeth into that one. It's going to be really awesome. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. And thanks so much, John, for joining me on this.
Sure thing, Tom.
Right, let's do our wrap up. If you did enjoy this, feel free to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications as any new video lands. Also, we must stress, if you want to see this video at high quality, we have a Patreon set up with high quality encodes of everything we've uploaded to YouTube. You can get the original sort of upload from there. But in the meantime, from John and myself, thanks so much for watching. He's alive.
Last week I had a chance to speak to Blue Point Games about the upcoming release of Demon's Souls for PS5. Today, I'm here to share the results with you. During this hour-long feature, you'll learn many new details about how things took after the game on PlayStation 5 and how Blue Point itself has evolved to meet this new
Thank you
challenge.
for tuning
We
in
also
to
have some
Ps4
exclusive
Local
new
News.
showcase
Have a pleasant day.
30 FPS 4K native mode, small comparisons to its performance speed. We'll have full coverage of the final games coming up, of course, but for now, let's dig in. Hello and welcome to a special direct discussion. Today we're talking about the new PlayStation 5 game, Demon's Souls, from Blue Point. So, this is a very special occasion because, as was the case with Shadow of the Colossus review back, I am joined by members of the one and only Blue Point to discuss the work they've done in bringing this game to life. Gentlemen, welcome. Hey.
My name is Peter Dalton. I'm the technical director for Blue Point Games.
Hi, my name is Gavin Moore. I'm the creative director for West Studios.
Perfect. So, yeah, the time is almost here. PS5 is coming back, at least, so much. It's gold, but it's almost ready to be played. And it's obviously been a long journey. We last spoke back when we finished Shadow of the Colossus, and I got the feeling that this next project was going to be rather ambitious. We guessed for years, what the heck could it be? And I was very pleased to see this team. But this is an interesting one. This is the first time you guys have worked with technology, I guess, created by From Software. So I guess the first thing I'd like to know then is just talk about the experience of getting your hands on that original game code, how you thought about approaching the project, and basically just give us some insight into that initial situation.
It's interesting. It's like as we start each project, Shadow to now Demon's Souls, like every time we start, it's a unique snowflake, and every time we get a brand new snowflake we have zero experience with, it's challenging to, dig in and figure out, how it works. I think, if you look at our process, usually we spend the first couple of months just getting the original game up and running on our original platform, so in this case, the PS3. I think one of our keys is we have a lot of guys that have got a lot of experience building games, and so you slowly start piecing it together. Like you start looking and like, where's the AI system, where's the render system, where's this system, and that one. And you start slowly piecing it together, and then you start to find the magic that actually starts to make it tick. But it's an interesting and challenging process, and keeps us on our toes.
We've been thinking about doing this for a long time. And I don't think we got up to that challenge. It wasn't until we won a game from Japan Studio that we made the challenge that we actually take on the challenge and then do it justice. I think, the guys have been what happened already, what it turned out is an incredible piece of gaming history to be perfectly honest. It's a stunning game on the PlayStation 5.
Yeah,
as we discussed on the, like last time we talked during the Shadow interview, like, as you were saying, it's like, yes, this is going to be a much bigger project, and, there's a lot more assets going into it, and just so much more. You don't have one single character, right, to worry about. All these different classes, all these costume choices, and every single one needs to look just as good as the next-gen game. So, I hope people won't be disappointed. We definitely try our best.
I remember announcing this project to the team, telling everybody, that Team Soul is going to be our next project. And the team was very excited. There's a lot of really hardcore fans within our studio. And then as soon as we started digging into the code base, we found God mode, so you couldn't die. The rest of the team was all on board as well. That was fun.
So I guess that's another thing I'm curious about. I assume, like Shadow, you're still running the underlying game, sort of combining it with your more modern engine.
Yeah, we take a very similar approach to what we did on Shadow, and we've talked about that process. So we run both engines side by side. On Shadow, though, we would run, the original Shadow game loop, and we would run the Cyberpunk game loop. This time, there's so much more going on. We had to take our technology, really rethink pieces of it, make it a lot more flexible. That it's more like both games that running intertwined with each other. It just keeps it a lot more interesting, but necessary in order, to hit our target frame rates and such.
Talk a little bit about how the rendering side, some of the obvious we have a full real-time solution. There's another one, they look reflections. But yeah, installation is a big one as well. That's where a lot of geometry comes from. And it also helps with building.
V, a vehicle of mine went dark near your position.
Fine. Keep an eye out.
For unknown reasons, the coordinates came through corrupted, so I'm unable to determine the precise location.
Perhaps. Very much. Yeah, but it's a dynamic yeah, it's a pretty dense wireframe. Previous generation look at everything like that, set it back to the art. Yeah, let's get back. Another one.
Fan received. Textbook example of a job well done, don't you think? A++. Contract closed.
I guess we don't really have clarification on the resolution and the way you're handling sort of like a temporal upscaling or something, kind of thing to reach 4K. Because I assume the quality mode of 30 frames is like native 4K rendering resolution. Performance mode, are you using sort of a dynamic solution, or is it similar to Shadow, or is it fixed resolution? So it's a bit of both, actually. So we are doing the same thing we did in Shadow, which is the same thing. There's no actual difference between gameplay trailers 1 and 2. We're using the same rendering techniques and it's based on a 1440p base generated frame that then gets temporarily combined into a 4K frame number. You get full 4K UI on top. It's dynamic in the sense that actually at the beginning of the game, the character what the? 4K, 60 FPS. But the actual main game an interesting experience. You can see those variations cinematic. That's nice. The game is just so much better. But going back the other way is pretty jarring, right? It's like when you get used to 60, then you know that better response, the big slack you get, and then going back and switching on cinematic mode, it does kind of take your eyes a little bit to adjust, you know, to make things look smooth again. Yeah, it does kind of feel like 30 seconds, but I'm not telling anybody anything new. Yeah, it's pretty either way for sure. Yeah, that's something I've been trying to push. I think we've all been discussing on the channel before, is that resolution makes the camera just doesn't matter. That's more about the technology. It used to be a big deal. It's loud and really easy to hear people speak their video. Now, I agree. You mentioned that local elimination. Talk a little bit about how your GIS works. Is it screen space GIS or calculator, or you need kind of stuff? There's a lot of potential there. So the general direction of that too much, that's why I should have later point. But essentially, we have these probes that are stored scattered throughout the environment that we pre-calculate that contain geometric detail about the environment. It's fairly quick to recalculate that kind of data, and then all actual lighting happens in real time, and so we basically have like this virtual, think of it like a virtual 3D atlas of 3D lighting probes that get dynamically updated based on which way the camera is looking expanded. So it's kind of like essentially the updates, update figures out which probes need to be updated. And they we fully support moving that service, and then real-time shadows that you can't really generate real-time shadows for a lot of this stuff, so you have to come up with alternate solutions so you don't push too much geometry to the console. So are you using sort of a hybrid system, sort of like shadowing out space shadows or something like that? Correct, yes, yeah. We have, it's not quite
Hey, Maelstrom's got a cyber psycho problem. I want him alive, so really try here. And be careful. Maelstromers are crazy. Psychosis or not.
It seems like the two differences that really stuck out to me beyond this like difference in resolution talk about your approach to optimizing so actually those two things you mentioned that you noticed the difference, they actually cause I think so as you get more geometry, you also have more screen shadows. But yes, general approach was, for us, Game of Thrones was always the 60 FPS game, right? There's always about the Twitch gaming moment, having that reaction time, having that good gameplay. So from the beginning, we designed it as a 60 FPS game in mind, and allowing this cinematic mode essentially, right? It makes it easy to do cinematic mode because you have more time available to you. So that then allows you to take that extra power and really just push it towards things to make it slightly more better. But our ultimate goal was the 60 FPS mode, the 30 FPS mode, when you look at them next to each other, they shouldn't look different, right? You shouldn't be like, oh, this is definitely a worse experience. It's designed to be an amazing experience, and great, that's the choice. We would prefer 30 FPS over 60 FPS. And so we dedicated that extra bandwidth that we have.
What in the fuck?
Lovely neighbor.
Settings, that higher and we also do some reflections as well.
You okay?
So reflections-wise,
Lilith has concealed the 10th circle from the ancestors' eyes.
The hell is this?
Got a bad feeling, V.
Better look around.
Especially building a launch game like this, you can't have it. So I'd like to give you a perspective on this. Was there any experimentation with it? Was there a point where you said that we don't have time to do something?
Oh shit.
You know, personally, looking at the game, I'm not sure if there's any, especially with Mac materials and stuff. Like say ray tracing there. So, what are your thoughts?
Correct. You're 100% correct. There's not a lot of mirrors to be found in Demon's Souls that are all that clean, right? So, yes. So it really just does come down to manpower. We have a lot of things to do. You know, there is a certain number of things you can do, and you pick the ones that are most important to you. And with the size of engineering staff, even though we're massively excited about it just wasn't feasible enough. Great racing would have had to be able to do so. So it truly just came down to time. We're really excited about it, and what we've seen so far is quite amazing, but we just didn't have the manpower to implement it in time for launch.
But I can imagine one thing you've probably taken advantage of, and something we haven't seen yet, is the super fast SSD. And you talked about how
yeah, you know, I think the day that we got the fast loading coming off of SSD was the day that we changed the devs' lives as far as the amount of, you know, how many iterations and stuff they can do within the game without sitting on the loading screen. I think one of the things that sort of caught us a little bit by surprise was, you know, as we started turning this on, and, you know, one of the big things that people on that, we had to look at it and make sure that, you know, we maintained our pacing in the game. That is, you transition from area to area, incrementally, you know, in that moment of breathe or whatever, and if you're moving, you know, fast. Yeah, I've been really impressed with what PS5 is able to do with loading. And it really hasn't been that difficult either to implement. So a lot of it feels like a lot of really free wins there.
I'd imagine you also save time on, let's say, the CPU side, where you don't have to worry about compression. Compression there, that sounds very beneficial.
Absolutely, like on the, I was just gonna say, like on the Ps4, you know, working with shadow and stuff, we have to go through and compress all of our textures, and we use, you know, Kraken compression, which is provided by Red. And then on the CPU side, we have to re-decompress everything and then transfer and then copy it over into the correct buffers and such. Nowadays on the PS5, all of that's handled by the hardware on the back end. We basically, to us, as a developer, it does not look like we're compressing any of our assets. It's really getting, if we've done it in the software, getting it all on the hardware side.
Yeah, actually, it would actually be impossible to do it in software, because when you're loading data, that can compress. The power needed to decompress that much data quickly, you have to have a hardware solution. You can't do it. So when it's 22.9 console, they took all those components into account, like from beginning to end. You can't have any bottlenecks in the whole loading pipeline. Otherwise, it's great to be able to load fast, but then you're sitting for a second waiting for it has to decompress.
I think also just jumping back to the SSD, it's incredibly important to mention that, you know, the original big frustration about internal PlayStation 3. So you die, and then wait 2 minutes to run back into the game, you frustrate the hell out of you, and then you do it again. But with the SSD on PlayStation 5, you die, fade to black, fade back up, go back in the game again to take revenge. And that's incredibly important. It takes the frustration out of the game. That SSD is stupidly fast. I mean, I remember people saying to me, I was like, come on, get the super fast loading, get the super fast loading. It's like, yeah, under 5 minutes, right? And that was the incredible job of the month. And then plug in, it's just, wow, that's crazy. You know, having to like perform something with super fast loading, that's it. It's just a fast thing to being able to jump back into your game, stay in the game, and become a convention.
So that's good news then, but easy, fairly easy. Which is something that makes me think about how this can impact games. This is making games, but how does this actually play into, let's say, the world design?
basically stream in and out as you move through the world. And so everything's dynamically streaming as you go, along with all of our textures. And so basically what it allows us to do is, like on a Ps4, we would go through and we would do the same sort of thing, but we have to be much more tolerant about how long does it take for each one of these chunks to load in. We have to give ourselves time. On the PS5, we can be a lot more aggressive about loading chunks right as you turn the corner, not, halfway down this hallway there. Which basically allows us to say that we need less second memory at all times, so we can basically take the areas that we're pushing and up the detail and up the textures, because they can all come in time when the player gets there.
Wow, that's really curious to see how this is play out. And so, does this then sort of follow that same that now when you're from one period to another, you're not waiting to go through this sort of
right? Well, in the original game, so the layout is the same as the original game. If you're familiar with the layout, it's usually very good. The big thing is in the original they would go through and say, well, we have this whole section, we have to load it all as one big chunk. We would do a little bit of streaming. We're able to basically go through and say, we don't care what the original game did with the streaming strategy. We're going to change it. We're going to be a lot more aggressive, so that not only between the worlds is the loading time greatly reduced. Basically, it's the clock come up, clock come down, and you're in the world. But now, as we move through the level, we're able to have, obviously, there's zero loading screens like the original game, but we're able to keep our sections smaller, which basically allows us to increase fidelity.
So actually, that's one thing then. So you guys talk about your shadows. This one is obviously, as you also said, significantly more ambitious. How has this changed your studio in terms of the available manpower?
I think that's kind of funny because I look back at Shadow and I remember finishing that up and thinking, that was a lot of work. I look at what we've now accomplished with Demon's Souls and I look back at Shadow and I was like, that seemed like a cakewalk. Pretty bad to do. But it's been great because it's really pushed our studio. I think across the board we've grown. Our art department has come night and day where we've grown a lot for Shadow. We are so much stronger and better today. And part of it comes down to, well, we rebuild these areas, we push the fidelity to brand new levels, and where do we create detail where detail never existed before? And so that basically requires us to look at it and taking into account, the framework that the original provided, but you're really looking at it and using all the techniques that you would if you were doing original game development. Concepting everything out, putting it in there, prototyping, and revisiting it 18 times in order to refine it to get exactly what you need. So it's been exciting and very challenging. But in the end, like we sort of talked about on Shadow, we've touched and changed everything. Basically all true here on Demon's Souls that we've gone through, and we've touched pretty much every single asset, figured out how everything works, and everything's been modified.
I think it's also important to say that, everything that we create, Peter said, is all based on imagination. Never design and Peter's absolutely correct. I mean, it's amazing to see and it's incredibly cool to the actual game because it actually enhances the story. Every room, every corridor, every boss, everything becomes a story. That makes it a character in its own right, and that just makes the world bigger and makes the story bigger. And you feel very comfortable about the story. So it's really amazing PlayStation 5 skill in both ways. And I know how much work they had to do because I know how much I was there step by step with them. I'd seen how hard they worked and tribute to them.
So actually, how long was the overall process for this? Was this the longest you worked on this dude, yeah. I mean, we're 3 years, just short maybe. It's a pretty massive effort. Also, our studio size has grown quite a bit. I think just internal staff was over 90. So yeah, there's a lot of people, and that doesn't count all the countless outsourcing. You know, new musicians like Gavin has spoken to before. There's 120 musicians that recorded the score. There's mocap actors that completely re-recorded every single enemy player move on the animations and lots of other moves. We expanded the animation move set to at least include full female animation sets. There's just so much stuff. The sound design, the amount of sound. That's something that kind of links back to the streaming question from earlier. Being able to stream a lot more also means you can have a lot more sounds because you can stream a lot more sounds now. They don't all have to be loaded into memory anymore. So yeah, the amount of content, the amount of people that work on this site is just impressive. In 3 years. And don't forget, you basically started with a complete game, right? So it's really, you spent those 3 years and all those people just making it better.
I think it's also important to say, you know, this is a real promotional effort. The guys in like they're the core team, they're the developers of the game, and we're driving it around the world. So we've had outsourcing in China, Malaysia, Vietnam, you know, all these Korean companies using our resource teams as well. There's a motion capture studio, they make up the sound, really a triple A title, and that's how much we respect the title and how much we respect the original creator's vision. You know, it's incredibly important that we do this game justice, and I believe we have, and I think it's a testament to their skill, really, that they've come through and done such a grand job on this.
Before we get to the next thing, though, I am curious. Did you get a chance to work at all with the original software? Are any of the machines still working with software?
So we got the next thing.
How's things with Max?
Not easy.
Be surprised if it worked. Guess he didn't like what you've become, huh?
I didn't used to like certain things either. Still don't like them. But I learned how to swallow them.
Alright, so Mark, you mentioned,
What's he gonna do now?
Don't think even he knows that.
models and
See you around.
I guess one of the first, this is just kind of a funny old time kind of thing. Like back in the day, whenever a new console generation arrived, the first thing we talked about is how many polygons were there. So I'm kind of wondering if you had sort of an average on just how many triangles are in If I had to guess, Peter, do you have a guess? Because honestly, we have GPU Mars green, and as long as those are green, we're happy to have programmers. So a lot of it comes down to how much detail do you need, and that's what we like. It's not really set very strict limits.
V, a vehicle of mine went dark near your position.
Fine. Keep an eye out.
For unknown reasons, the coordinates came through corrupted, so I'm unable to determine the precise location.
Again, its wireframe is so dense that most of the time you can't tell the difference. I would say the characters are at the top LED definitely in excess of 2,000 frames for just a normal human-sized character. So I guess that's actually interesting. It's actually reached the point where you have enough available power on just in terms of drawing triangles. It's just, well, yeah, you gotta think about it, but it's less of a.
I think it speaks around about it. You know, you get all this freedom and then just get all this freedom to go away. It's amazing.
Hey, motherfucker! You're a bitch!
Yeah, sort of ways to achieve that, right? And plus you have to have incredible artistic talent. And it takes time. And that's the problem that always up against, especially with the launch times.
Man, I hate this Carol shit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've thought about a lot lately where I feel like we're approaching the point where the biggest limitations actually manpower and budget as opposed to just street partners. really a talented on staff. It is having good tools and good processes. It's really like the whole thing. And it definitely helps to have a great game to begin with to start with as inspiration. Oh yeah, for sure.
V, a vehicle of mine went dark near your position.
Fine. Keep an eye out.
For unknown reasons, the coordinates came through corrupted, so I'm unable to determine the precise location.
Why you?
You're gonna get it now!
All of our breaks are predetermined. And then we have, take a barricade or something like that, we'll have 5 or 6 varieties of those things placed throughout areas. So it's definitely structural, but they're placed at levels. And then we've gone through and we've added multi-layer. Break each of the individual things, then break the top shelf, complete the bottom shelf, and so you can have multi-stage destruction. We've also spent a lot of optimization time to basically make sure that we can increase the density of the areas so that we can go through and make sure that our shelves are overpopulated. And when you go into a room, try to create consistency so that as the player learns that pretty much everything is breakable in this area, we're able to hold that and maintain that level of immersion throughout the entire world. And that part has actually been very challenging. The other piece we spend a lot of time on is we wanted to make sure that we didn't run into the standard problems of I break this table or I break this chair that then lands on top of this other thing, but then you break that, which then leaves all these floating pieces. Or, some of the games are very familiar, if you're familiar with them, they're very common problems. Boards will come and lay up against the player or something of that nature, then you walk away and you get all these floating pieces throughout the environment, which, the interaction is awesome, but when you start seeing those floating pieces, it starts breaking that creating optimization structures to basically ensure that anything breaks, all the proper pieces are rewoken up and re-sim and fall down to the ground smoothly. And so it's been a fun undertaking.
So the reason that necessitates all this complexity is the fact that in Soul games, structures don't fade away in this way. In our games, if you have structures in an environment, actually fade out and disappear, you end up with such a because there's just so many structures in the environment. So that's also another thing to keep in mind, like as you walk through an area and destroy things and then come back, they're still there, they're still destroyed. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
Along those lines, I think that's been one of our interesting
Not the cheese. That was for me. The bean shit was for you. I put that shit like not even being any kind of chips with it. You just grab cheese. Them empty. Don't even listen. Okay, bitch, there's spaghetti in there. Don't stop. I don't give a fuck. You about to annoy me. Please don't fucking annoy me. Please don't annoy me. I don't even know. Leave it alone. This shit ain't even loud.
I just want to turn it off.
I don't give a fuck. Just like last night. You gonna turn the shit on when you wake up. Please don't start.
I'm hungry.
I don't care. It got shit to do with me. You laughed at me for making a play. I don't care. That's for me. The bean is for you. I was being considerate. It got you beans, bro. The cheese is for me. Fucking asshole. Like, bro, you're so annoying, bro. God damn, shut up. Be quiet. I don't care what you saying, bro. I'm playing the game.
You're not watching it. I don't want to look at her.
listening to it. They talking about Demon Souls, bro. Be quiet. You ain't gotta look at it. Go take your ass to sleep. You annoying. Okay, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. You don't understand. I ain't trying to talk right now. You keep on making me motherfucking have to talk to you, bro. You're annoying.
I'm not asking you to
Okay, be quiet, please.
It's distracting my brain.
Be quiet. Now I gotta keep shut up.
Can you please turn it off? You're not even touching it.
Whether it's a metal pot or it's a wooden crate, our staff goes through and creates burn masks.
Can you please turn it off?
Burn textures.
Bro, chill. Stop talking to me, bro.
It's distracting us.
Sit straight up. Shut up.
Because when I was trying to fall asleep, it kept waking me up.
Basically set up to burn in different ways. And so then there's a combination of material systems and particle systems, that come together to basically settle the effect. But it is, art going through and tagging and creating these textures for every single thing. As we went through towards the end of the game, one of our fears were there's so many different combinations of things that we would end up missing. We'd miss a sword or we'd miss a state on one of the armor pieces or something like that. And so it was going through and testing, make sure every destructible
Bitch, shut up, bro. You like, I ain't cussing you out or nothing, but you gonna keep on going until I do, bro. Chill. You fucking pissing me off. Be quiet. I'm listening to it. I'm playing the game. Shut up. You gonna wake everybody up? Lay down. You eat ice cream. You ain't even trying to go to sleep. Be quiet.
I was trying to.
Okay, whatever. Shut up talking to me, bro. It's fucking annoying. Like, bro, chill. Like, my bad. I'm sorry I touched your button. Shit, you annoying. I don't give a fuck. You the same bitch to wake me up every day.
Because you don't touch.
Next level, bro.
Shit distracting. I'm tired of TV waking up.
Okay, bitch, go to sleep.
How? The fucking TV?
Trying to. You forcing it. Like, I don't care what you say, bro. I shouldn't have to be talking to you. Chill and watch your mouth. You just starting shit for no reason, bro. Fucking annoying ass bitch.
What can I get for you? Something hot. Cold. Coffee. Liquor.
Could use a buzz. Give me a Calavera.
Everyone listen up. This is a fucking robbery. Mr. Slick, behind the counter? Yeah, you! Shut the fuck up! Put your hands up where I can see them. The rest of you, stay where you are! And don't fucking move a muscle! If I hear so much as a peep, you're only getting a side order of lead! We clear? Wallets on the table! Keep your mouth shut!
Somebody likes being the center of attention.
What part of keeping your fucking mouth shut did you not understand? How about you go first? Hand over your wallet. Nice and easy.
Can't believe you've made it this far.
You with your shit again?
People who don't judge their competition don't last too long in the streets. I've met people like you before. They're all dead now. Know why? Because none of them could get the spec on me.
Nice try. You're bluffing. Trying to trip me
I
up.
dance a Maelstrom in Arasaka. You think you could so much as scratch me? You'll die before you can pull that trigger. I guarantee you.
It's Bale.
For years, nobody touches this place, and now this? Where's 6th Street when you need them? Thank God you were here.
I'll take a drink.
What can I get for you? Something...
Creating a balance of, creating ragdolls that are immersed in the world, but they're still fully, you can interact with them. Like, you can still push them around a bit.
Oh my god, bro. Shut the fuck up. I'm so tired of you, dog. You so annoying, bitch. You don't do shit but complain, dog. Stop. No, shut the fuck up. Go to sleep. God damn. Can't even fuck cause your bitch ass so annoying, bro. I don't care. Shut up. God damn, bro. Maybe I can beg somebody to shut the fuck up. You'll wonder why, nigga. Why can't I go nowhere with you, bitch? Cause every night you on some bullshit, bro. I ain't care what you're saying, bro. You so annoying with this shit.
Pete, got a job for you. My client had a shitload of bid assets stolen. What's
Literally, I go out my way to like be nice to you. I don't know if I like, bro. I don't care, bro. Go out my way to be nice to you, bro. You fucking asshole, bro. Swear to God, you don't wake up and I be gone. Like, nigga, I literally sit here and ask for permission to do shit like go get weed and shit. Bitch, shut up. I don't want to hear your mouth. I'm sitting here playing the game. You keep complaining about everything. I don't give a fuck. I was finna jump in the bed and shit, bro. You making prolonging the shit with your fucking mouth as usual. Like, I'm supposed to just sit here and fucking be wanting to argue with you fucking sun up to sun down, bro. That's all you care about. Yeah, whatever.
V, got a job for you. My client had a shitload of beta assets stolen. What's beta acid, you might wonder? Fuck if I know. But it's worth a lot, and our client wants it back. That's where you come in. Iron at the ready. More info attached.
Follow me, soldier!
Call you back.